All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you all. It is a great Thursday recorded audience. I'm loving it. And Albert, you are here. I know you've taken an additional day this week, but it is nice to have you in the captain's chair, sir.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, and Kim is here too.
Kim, how are you?
She is in the co-captain's chair. We have a lot to get to today. I wish the news was better. It's always so difficult to sort these things out, these tragedies. I think when they're air traffic and airplane tragedies of any kind, they hit and land with all of us in a different way because we all are on these planes all the time, right? At one time or another, we always feel as though, hey, we have to have faith in the system. We'll talk a little bit about that system. We'll talk about a little bit of the specifics here. I've got a great aviation expert for you who is a friend of the show. Patrick Weil is coming back in just a matter of moments. We'll just kind of set the scene for you. And thank you for being here.
What can you tell us about the scene?
All right, I'll get you all up to speed on the scene. But that's not the only thing we're talking about today. In fact, JL Cauvin joins us bottom of the hour. JL is a lawyer. He's a big-brained YouTube creator, and he's a comic who does the riff on Donald Trump. He'll just do 3 minutes in a perfect Trump riff. He's got the tics, he's got the breathing, he has everything. And in this weird way, he wraps some great social and political insight. You'll love JL Cauvin if you don't know him, and I think many of you do know him. He's a really popular voice when it comes to today's political environment. So we'll talk to him. All of that in the first hour. Then Daid Katz, the brilliant legal analyst, will join us in the second hour. We will address along the way, and with Daid Katz, the Kash Patel confirmation hearing that's going on right now, also the Tulsi Gabbard confirmation hearing, and the RFK Jr. confirmation hearing. All of those are going on concurrently. We will discuss them, and I'll play you audio and video from those hearings. So there's a lot to get to. Anything that you need to say, Kim, before we begin? Because once this train leaves the station, Kim, I can't double back for some little thing that you want me to go back and comment on.
All aboard. Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is an extraordinary thing, the news that broke last night. A passenger jet and a Black Hawk helicopter colliding in midair, crashing into the Potomac River near Reagan National Airport. Reagan National Airport is in Washington, one of two airports in and around the Washington area, if you don't count BWI, the Baltimore Washington Airport, which is much farther away. But people in government like the national airport, renamed Reagan National Airport, because of its proximity to where their offices are, where they're to the city. And so there's a lot of pressure from politicians to get more traffic and more flights in and out of Reagan National Airport. More on that in a while. But just for now, this plane, an American Eagle flight number 5342, it's a regional jetliner. It was carrying 60 passengers, 4 crew members. They were flying from Wichita, Kansas. There were 3 soldiers on board the Sikorsky H-60. That's the U.S. Army helicopter. And the two collided. D.C. Fire and Emergency Medical Services Chief John Donnelly saying in a news briefing that 27 bodies had been recovered from the plane, 1 from the helicopter. He said that the efforts at the scene are now turning to a rescue operation. The 2 Russian figure skating coaches who were there, killed on the American Airlines crash, were 2 Olympians, former world champions in the pairs event. They were also a married couple with a son who finished 4th last week at the U.S. National Championships in Wichita. Their son was not on the same flight. These two won a world championship title together in pair skating in 1994 at Lillehammer Games. They just missed out on Olympic medals, and they moved to the U.S. and started coaching generations of young skaters in New England. This is a classic immigration story. Wonderful, brilliant, virtuoso skaters coming to this country and training generations of future Americans to compete in figure skating, the beautiful sport. And it's interesting. Well, their story in itself is fascinating and interesting, but the tragedy is compounded by the loss of this entire team, wasn't it, Kim? It was a group of young figure skaters all coming from this
sad.
Wichita event.
Ugh.
And so it is that all those sweet souls are lost. How could this have happened? The explanations provided by government and by the president differ. The new president, Donald Trump, has his own version of events. But Albert, quickly, if you could run the ABC Martha Raddatz piece, I just feel as though this gives you at least the reasonable specifics on a couple of things that happened. And then we'll bring on our aviation expert and sort through the actual tower audio as they communicated with these aircraft. Go ahead, Albert, please.
Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz. Martha, we now know that this Army helicopter was executing a training mission, but these pilots were not rookies.
They were not rookies. In fact, what Pete Hegseth said earlier today was they were fairly experienced. This is a requirement right now, these annual night evaluations going down the river. These are helicopters that ferry VIPs or senior Army leadership regularly. So this crew was practicing that sort of movement, even though they'd probably done it many, many times before. As Steve said, they train in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps all the time. That is what readiness is all about. And that's what they were doing on this mission, on this training mission. But today, President Trump's Army Secretary nominee, Daniel Driscoll, said there are appropriate times to take risk and there are inappropriate times to take risk. I think we might need to look at where is an appropriate time to take training risk, and it may not be near at an airport like Reagan, where the airplane was hit. But Hegseth said very, very clearly today, a mistake was made, and they were clearly pointing the finger at the helicopter, although the president kept referencing air traffic control as well. He also said something that stood out to me, which I have not heard, which they were going in opposite directions because we have been told that they were both in that landing pattern. So I don't know where that particular comment came from, but it's something that they will look at. They will look at everything. Clearly, the administration wants to get information out as soon as possible, Kara.
Well, they want to get information out, but there are parts of the administration, like the president, who have their own spin on that information. The names of the ice skating pair, as noted here from Rain, the Russian championship skaters, Evgenia Shishkova, and Vadim Naumov. So, yeah, if I skipped over their names, I probably did it subliminally because I didn't want to butcher their names, but there they were. I mean, two extraordinary coaches. I mean, Olympic champions or world champions, and yet, sadly, they've now coached so many young skaters, and now they've lost their lives. Donald Trump saying that it was a DEI problem. He, in remarks in front of the media and the nation, I would suggest digressed from his prepared remarks to suggest that the organization under Obama, under Biden, had been cored out, meaning the organizations and structures associated with the FAA, and they've been cored out to conform with DEI hires. For him, it was all about DEI hires. There's no evidence that that is the case, but that was the default position of the president.
Can they collect the bodies from the Potomac before we politicize it? Before we start blaming Black people, women, people of color? Can we at least like mourn the dead and identify the dead before we turn it into a circus?
Well, I do want to get the sense of what happened here, and then I will double back to policy, because policy isn't insignificant, and Trump himself did something that he, of course, has left out of the explanation. And one of the things that he's done, as you're aware, is he's gotten rid of the head of the FAA. There was no head of the FAA when this happened last night. Now he scurried and appointed a new FAA head just in the last couple of hours. But when this happened, this deadly collision between the passenger jet and a military helicopter, there was no leader of the FAA. And the FAA, the head of TSA, they've all been fired in the sweeping that the new administration did. Now, would that have mattered here? I'm going to say probably not, but I don't really know what I'm talking about on that, and I thought I'd bring someone in who does. But yeah, Trump dismantled the FAA. It's on him and Hegseth, says Santi. Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be there's a portion of the population that's going to feel that way. Certainly, as Kim says, blaming DEI or whatever seems completely inappropriate on the one hand, and also lunacy on the other. So I want to get to our guest, who is a friend of the show and a great aviation expert, having been one of the key figures to get EasyJet up and running. They are the massive kind of Southwest Airlines of Europe, and he is everything aviation. He grew up in the world of aviation. He can do everything but build one of these planes single-handedly. He's so very impressive, and I love the fact that we have him today. Patrick Weil, everybody.
Hello, sir. Hi, Mark.
Thank you for being here. I know these are tough situations to piece together because we only get fragments of information along the way. In fact, I just saw shortly before an American Airlines regional jet and an Army helicopter collided near Reagan National Airport, the plane's pilots were asked to pivot landing route from one runway to another. This is according to the latest, again, as I say, from those who were briefed on events and conversations. I want to get your general thoughts, and then I want to play for you the audio from the tower, and maybe you can help sort that out for us as sort of a more trained ear.
Sure, no problem. So anyway, these runway changes happen frequently. It's all about the wind direction, basically.
I see.
So the wind goes down, basically runway 33, and that's where the wind's coming from. So that happens frequently. I'm very familiar with Reagan Airport, as a matter of fact. So it's a tricky airport on many different fronts. One is that you literally have to follow the river all the way to the runway. It's you're not allowed to fly over, say, the White House or the Washington Monument or the Capitol, that kind of thing, just for security reasons. So, but in this particular situation, these airplanes are arriving from the south, and they weren't directly affected over, DC proper. They were coming up the river, Maryland on the right side and Virginia on the left. So that's one thing. What is astonishing to me is how a helicopter would even venture into a hot zone, which is what they call the arrival area or the runway extension, about 3,000 or 4,000 feet out from the end of the runway. That's just, nobody goes there. Helicopter, doesn't matter what it is. That is astonishing to me. And the way I saw this accident happen is it appeared to be that the helicopter contacted the airplane from the rear of it, maybe after they didn't even see it, and the airplane would never saw it. And it chopped the tail off the airplane, and then it just went right into the ground that way. And that, I sent you a video yesterday about that military air show that happened in Dallas, where a similar thing happened, where a plane cut the tail off, and it just pitched over and died. It hit the ground
Yeah, that actually was, the video was instructive because you think at an air show, everything's fairly controlled, you know, and still there was this, as you suggest, similar accident where the chopper is nailing the rear of a plane. I mean, I think it was a jet at that, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, I guess they're all jets, but you know, I mean, it was a military jet, I guess, and the same kind of accident. Play, if you would, Albert, play for Patrick and for everyone the tower communications, and maybe after it's only 30 seconds, you can give us a sense of what they were saying.
Okay.
Pat 25, get CRJ in flight.
Pat 25,
Pat
you have
25, Pat 1
CRJ.
CRJ.
Let me stop for a second. I'm going to try to repeat this because a lot of people listen and don't watch. Okay, so if you're listening and you're on, we have a lot of big podcast audience who only have the audio. I'll try to repeat this. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but
it's very clear to me, Mark.
Is it okay? Then let's just play it with. I'm not going to repeat it. Then let's just play it.
Find it, CRJ. Did you see that? 472. American 3130, go around, turn left in 250, Clementine 3000.
Left in 350, 3000, American 3130.
Lucy for 347, go around, climb maintain 3000, flight
3000, heading, go around 3000, Blue Streak 5347.
Blackjack 3, can you return to base? What? Blackjack 3, proceed directly to Glebe. I need you to land. I need you to land immediately. Can you go to Dulles for a few minutes?
So once they're saying that, Patrick, this accident has happened, right? Can you go to Dulles for a few minutes?
Yeah.
So
Blackjack 3 is another military helicopter. Just so
I see. Okay.
Yeah. In that area, they were apparently. What it sounds to me like is in California, it's a very interesting thing. That kind of thing happens a lot in the area called Imperial Beach Naval Station, where they have helicopters there to patrol the border and so forth. Well, I was just in Tijuana last week, and the Tijuana airport is situated right on the border itself. So a lot of times airplanes will come in from an opposite direction. They have to come in over San Diego. And a lot of times the helicopters are patrolling the border, et cetera, fly right underneath the arriving planes. And I saw this happen 2 weeks ago, actually. Very similar situation. And the tower, it sounds to me like the air traffic controller assumed that the helicopter knew that jet was in sight, which it was clearly not, obviously. And then there was another departing flight happening simultaneously from another runway. And I don't think they would have mistaken that departure for the arrival. So, and so what happens is when you're coming into Reagan, which I should give you a demonstrator, but my feeling is that the helicopter was slightly below and pointing in a westerly direction looking at the same thing that the CRJ was looking at, as opposed to looking to their left to see if the airplane was coming around the corner, which it does in that particular runway. It's kind of it was a runway that was shut down for many years, and then they cleared out a bunch of space and reopened it so they could have an additional runway at Reagan. And but it's been used for 20 years now, so I don't think that would have been a issue.
So when he says, and apparently the pilot of the chopper was an experienced pilot, when he says in a communication, the tower is asking, "Do you see that, whatever it was, the plane?" And he says,
"I didn't hear it."
Oh yeah, he doesn't. I thought they said, "Did you see it?" But they didn't. There in that 30 seconds, they didn't say that.
Yeah, that was another airplane somewhere. Right? That was not a helicopter.
Right, that was another plane. That's exactly my point. He do you see that plane? That plane. There's 3 planes up there. Or do you see that guy? I forget exactly what it was, but it was. I'm wondering if that might have been the confusion as well.
Well, my knowledge is that there were 3 different planes approaching the airport simultaneously. Basically they're stacked out for 2 minutes separation. So it was probably another airplane in the approach for the same runway, and they then had to veer them off and send them to Dulles. So but that would have been obvious from the tower. He would have seen that for sure.
This one from Michael D. Mark, can you ask your guest if it is likely that the helicopter was given an altitude which should have kept vertical separation from landing aircraft on final? It's now being pointed out, just as a quick note, that perhaps the helicopter was flying, it was 100 feet higher than it had actually been given clearance for. I don't know if that matters, but that is being seen. I'm seeing that in published reports this morning. But can you speak to the question that Michael has? Is it likely that the helicopter was given an altitude which should have kept vertical separation from landing aircraft on final approach?
I never heard an altitude call out from the tower at all. In fact, like I said, you don't go into that no-fly zone at the end of the runway. They were only 30 seconds from touching down, so you just wouldn't go in that area if you're a helicopter, and even a kite. It's that kind of thing. You just wouldn't do that. And I never heard them acknowledge an altitude assignment whatsoever in that.
This from Gina in New York. I think the helicopter pilot thought the plane was ascending, and a confusion happened. Can you speak to that?
There was definitely a departure happening on a nearby runway. You could see that, but I just think they were blindsided. I think they were looking in the same direction and didn't look to their left or their right type of thing. I think that's really what happened. It was what happened on their left side. Yeah.
There's the view of the airport. For those who are just listening, Albert's put up kind of an aerial view of Reagan National.
Yeah, the runway in question is the one on the top of the picture here. So it'd be the very top. The long runway that you see is the departure runway typically. So that departure was happening on that long runway, and then the one that was arriving would have come in over that dock area there. And that's
I see. Yeah.
And that runway was relatively reopened not too long ago, like 15 years ago, I think it is now. But it used to be on the top of the picture where you see like the road and the island there. That used to be a bunch of hangars there. So that was unused for many, many years. And then they opened it up and extended the runway. That's kind of I don't think that would have played a factor. The helicopter was coming out of a base directly across the river from Reagan Airport.
I see. I see.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to know that, because it would seem as though the pilot involved and the traffic involved would be very familiar.
That's what's astonishing. Yeah, absolutely astonishing. And again, the airplane had no chance really at that point. I mean, even you could see how it was cut in half, and then even the wing strobe lights were still flashing all the way down to the water. So I mean, they just didn't have any. I mean, you went from 125 miles an hour to 0 in 4 seconds. And that, just the stress of that, everybody was in their seats strapped in, but you would have broken every bone in your body if that happened to you physically. Yeah.
The building of Dulles Airport. I'm a Washingtonian. I grew up in Washington, D.C.
Oh, good.
And I'm old, so I actually remember the opening of Dulles Airport, believe it or not. And it was so exciting. It was this, futuristic airport. It's very cool looking at the time. And the idea was, and how it pertains to what we're talking about now, is that it would take pressure off of National Airport, it was called at the time, Reagan National now, and that the air traffic and essentially the entire airplane game, if you will, was going to move out to Dulles. And eventually they were even talking about closing National Airport because it was too close to the city, and any kind of accident or issue would affect this population center in Washington, D.C., where Dulles is out in Virginia. You remember that, right, Patrick? Yeah.
Yeah, well, the problem with that whole thing was the metro did not go there. And that was the biggest hang up. And that's what got the argument to keep National open, because nobody could get out to Dulles. That was the biggest problem. I remember that when I was a kid. You had to get on this like Greyhound bus and take it in 26 miles to get to the city.
Patrick's right. It's a long way. It's still a long way. I mean, if you jump in a taxi, it's $110 to drive into Washington. And to the point, a lot of legislators who work in Washington, they don't want to have to go out to Dulles. So there was a lot of pressure. I'm talking about political pressure to not only keep Reagan National Airport open, but to increase the volume of traffic there so that there could be more flights.
Sure.
This is a true lobbying effort on the part of not only politicians, but airlines. Delta Airlines contributed a bunch of money to various key senators and legislators who lobbied to get more and more flights in and out of Reagan. And to your point, Patrick, they reopened or opened up an additional runway to accommodate that.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. In fact, American Airlines, well, the whole terminal was rebuilt probably in the late 90s, I suppose. And that was when they sort of revamped it. I mean, you can even take a flight on Alaska to LA, out of LAX nonstop to DCA, which is quite amazing. It's a very short runway. I equate it to like being a Burbank type of airport. And you know, LaGuardia is a similar situation. And even Boston Logan, which is a big airport, but it's right dab in the middle of the city, which is a lot of obstacles in every direction you can think of. So I mean, there's so much interest in having these airports smack dab in the middle of the city that I don't think it's a great idea, especially we've seen what's happened here.
I mean, do you think this will have any sort of sweeping policy effect? I don't think they're going to close this airport. It's just way too valuable to, as I say, key people in Washington from just a commercial aircraft standpoint.
Well, yeah, I don't see that happening, but I do see like the Pentagon's right here. You're from Washington, you know. Pentagon's right off the side of National on the Virginia side, and there's a lot of helicopters going in and out of that place as well. And what I have a feeling is going to happen here is that they're going to divert all that helicopter traffic to the east, and they'll keep things away from the end of the national airport. And I mean, that's the quick fix, I suppose. It's probably happening today, actually.
Well, I mean, that is something that you'd expect, right? I mean, they've already hinted at it. They'd have to they're going to change the training protocols. And I mean, it's extraordinary, though, that as you say, and I wasn't aware of this, that they're, essentially taking off those choppers from space very close, that's right across the Potomac River.
And that's where Marine One and all those helicopters for the president and everything are based right there. And they're right, you can literally, it's directly across from the end of the runway where this happened. And that's what's astonishing to me is why in the world would you even take a chance? And if you knew the airplanes were coming in from that direction, which they clearly are supposed to tell the military helicopter, and they were supposed to be following the air traffic control. So I suspect there's going to be a little bit of an issue with the air traffic controller on duty. I think it was sort of not confirmed that airplane was clearly in sight, and that's a cardinal sin of aviation right off the bat.
Patrick, we so appreciate your time and your insight, and we wanted to have you back on the show just to talk about aviation challenges generally, and then this happened, and my God, there's a lot of things to cover, but we'll get to it, and when you have another opportunity for me, I'll be happy to join you. I'd love to double back and talk to you again under more relaxed circumstances for sure. Patrick Weil, everybody. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Right on, my friend.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Donald Trump, of course, blames the crash on former Presidents Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Didn't realize they were in the tower, but apparently they're in Trump's tower. Quote, their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. He's claiming that their policies led to a deterioration of competent workers in the federal government. Quote, they actually came out with a directive, too white. And we want the people that are competent, he said. He also seemingly blamed operating the helicopter and the air traffic controller. He said, quote, you had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter. It was a clear night. It was cold, but clear as you could be. This is continuing the quote from him, obviously. The American Airlines plane had lights blazing, Trump said. I have helicopters, he said. You can stop a helicopter very quickly. It had the ability to go up or down. It had the ability to turn, he said. And he said, he, quote, was not blaming the controller. But he said there are things that you could question, like the height of the helicopter, the height of the plane, being at the same level and going in opposite directions. But the common theme of Trump's news conference was a consistent railing against DEI policies. He says that DEI policies could very well have played a part in the breakdown. No evidence to back that up, but he shoehorns the DEI stuff into this terribly tragic story. The Department of Defense new head, Pete Hegseth, VP J.D. Vance, and it's Duffy. Is he the Transportation Safety Board guy? Is he the new NTSB head? I forget.
Let me do a Google search for that.
Okay. In any case, Trump was flanked by all of his people, and then he spoke about DEI. The reason I mention that is the other people there. Who was it? What is Duffy doing?
Transportation Secretary.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So anyway, the other people there who I've referred to, they, when they took the mic, didn't refer to DEI. Okay, they talked about various specifics associated with this accident, and even as the investigation goes on. But then when Trump came back to the mic, he riffs about DEI more. It's just a very sad thing, compounded by more sadness when you have the leader of the country, Donald Trump, using it to hang what is clearly a major political grievance he has on the loss of life and the attention that he gets in that moment. So that's a little bit about the aviation accident. We'll double back as there is more information coming in, but definitely a bizarre day when you have a tragedy of this sort, which has legitimate questions associated with it, involving the military, training exercises, etc. When you have it capped today by this press conference in which the new president lays in a political agenda, it's disturbing in the extreme.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on. Right on. I know it's a tough pivot, everybody, on a very sad day following the crash in Washington, but there is other stuff going on, and I'm sure even JL may have some comments about what went on overnight and the president's remarks. But this guy is more than just a stand-up and more than just a guy who does this great Trump impression with Trump's tics and Trump's breathing, and he can riff as Trump for literally hours at a time. He does it on his podcast, but the other thing I really want you to understand about JL Cauvin is he's really sharp. I mean, really smart. He's a lawyer who's also this comic, and he has super clean takes on a lot of what's going on right now when he's not doing the Trump impression. So he, of many podcasts that we'll get to, and of the new stand-up special, it's called Inauguration is My Favorite N-Word. How about it for JL Cauvin, everybody?
Hello, good to be back.
Yeah, good to see you, sir.
Yeah,
Wow.
I figured, I was booked a few days ago, and I said, well, some national tragedy has to come to put a damper on this. But unlike the president, I won't spend my time on the show blaming things because I'm just bitter that, what he's afraid of. I'm sorry to jump right into the hot take.
Please, jump.
First of all, I feel like DEI is the new, they're going to rape your daughters. And if I can explain that, it's like this idea of like, okay, nobody really believes that 1870s Jim Crow racist dog whistle. So now it's just going to be every problem is related to people of color or women taking your white man job, which is part of your identity, like what you do for your job and feed your family. It's there as part of your identity. So it's now this sort of incredible over application of DEI, where if we had a sense of humor and we could look at this emperor with, no clothes on, we'd all laugh at him and go, you sound ridiculous. But there's enough people who want this message who eat it up. It's a terrible thing. And I said today in a video I posted a couple hours ago, I said, this is a guy who, if he were president on 9/11, he would be complaining about woke flight attendants in between plane crashes. I think he's that self-centered, and he has the kind of mindset, I think, of almost a serial killer. Like, I think somewhere in his past, he has definitely harmed animals, because there is this kind of inability to even fake empathy. Like it's sort of interesting if it wasn't so dangerous, but like, he can't even fake it. He can't, like, I remember during Charlottesville, I thought to myself, oh no, this is such an easy one. This is such a layup. And the Van Joneses of the world are gearing up with their "he became president today" takes when he denounces racists with tiki torches saying anti-Semitic things. The easiest thing in the world. And he couldn't. He couldn't. And I remember hearing Joe Rogan say, he was so mad because if you look at the full context of the quote, they really took it out of context. He was just saying not that the tiki torch guys were good, but that on this protest, there were good people on both sides. And if you take that, I ask, oh, you mean not the tiki torches, but just the people who wanted to preserve racist statues put up during an era of racial terror in the South? Just them. They're good people. They're just not screaming anti-Semitic chants. Those are bad people. But if you just love Jim Crow for the fun of it, Joe Rogan and company consider you a perfectly legitimate person.
Well, the pretzel logic associated with trying to justify various things that Trump has said. And there's a lot of that even with Musk. We're going to have this later, but we could actually run it now. Albert, you had the priest who, there's all that question of did Musk actually give the Sieg Heil salute? And I thought it was pretty straightforward that he did. But it was, well, he's got a tic, and, he's on the autism, he's Aspergery. I mean, there were all these things that were kind of farming it out to these various things so that it wasn't really what it was, Sure. And of course, there was no comment made on the part of Musk to denounce it in any way or to say, hey, you guys misunderstand. Of course I wouldn't be part of that. So this is a dude who is, I believe, an Anglican bishop, and he is a strict...
Thank goodness. As a Catholic, I can't deal with any more priest problems that I have to defend or explain. So
it's the Anglican Catholic Church, and he is from Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's where his parish is, or his congregation is.
And his outfit is from the Crucible.
He does have for those just listening, the black frocked look. He's really playing it big. And what he is known for is being super anti-abortion, anti-women's right to choose. That's his big thing. He carries that torch. And here he is in his final remarks. This is very short. It's only about 20 seconds, giving the same salute as Elon Musk. Go ahead, Albert.
This is the last stand for Christendom. It's make or break time. The whole of the old world is crumbling. Every country in Europe is embracing death. America, as far as I could see, is the only country fighting for life. And that's down to you guys. So God bless all of you for what you're doing. Please keep doing it. I hope that I can encourage you. And my heart goes out to you. God bless.
And he does it with a smile. It's like an inside joke, like wink, wink. You know what's going on. He literally smiles.
Hitler was well known to be a pro-lifer.
Yeah, once you the 6 million people that he killed, and 11 million, I think, actually in total. Yeah.
That's one definition of life. Living people breathing and living their lives is one definition of life. I mean, that's the more narrow, I think, radical left life definition.
Ron says this, JL, I'm autistic. it is not appropriate to do a fascist salute. We know what the German fascists did to autistic people. That's a good point, too. You know,
yeah, my older nephew is autistic, and he's never even come close to a Hitler salute. So
yeah,
you know,
it's
anecdotal evidence, obviously, but I'm willing to buy that it's not
part of the
part of the
not part of the
package.
training. Hi, Mark and Kim. I am Anglican. This is a chaplain, Fred, who is our as close to God as we get on this show, and I guess he's an Anglican chaplain. Apparently, he's chaplain to firefighters. By the way, kind of interesting. So, in any case,
a lot of infidelity confessions. If I know my firefighters.
I always thought that firefighters did have the gig of gigs because I'd see the fire truck parked in front of various, you know, they can park them anywhere, of course. And then I'd see these guys come off, they'd be getting coffee or going shopping. I saw them parked outside the Beverly Center in Los Angeles, etc. But then I realized, yeah, but dude, they're allowed to do that because they risk their lives when the going gets really rough. And so yeah, but you're right. They are beloved and sought after by most of the, yeah, I mean, and you know what I mean. So, JL, it's weird. First of all, I want to talk about your special because your new comedy special is Inauguration is my favorite N-word.
Yes.
So you do it as Trump. Give me for those who haven't seen Donald Trump, Inauguration is my favorite N-word. What is it?
It's basically, it's a fully in character special where, you know, Donald Trump, who kind of never stopped selling things. Like I actually purchased a new hat just for my sketches and stuff. It's the only time I give money to Win Red. And I've been getting texts. When I tell you I'm getting 3 to 4 texts a day for the last month, asking me to join, donate, purchase this, get this photo. It is like QVC on steroids, and he's the president and he can't run again. So it heightens the idea of it being such a grift. But I thought to myself, I wanted to do a sort of long form thing as Trump. And so what it is, and you can tell when people watch it, they're like, I think the audience was like not all in on it. And I go, yes, and it's perfect. Because it's me as Trump if Trump were really being a stand-up comedian and thought he was funny. So there's some jokes, there's some stories, there's setups that people laugh at that I go, well, no, that's just the setup. The funny part is insert cruel thing that isn't funny at all. There's like a very cliche hack bit on trans kids because, you know, that is like the currency of the realm right now with any non-woke comedian. No matter how many times the same joke about a kid identifying as a cat is told, it somehow escapes comedy credibility as hack and is fresh as the day, you know, as anything. Things like that. So I just wanted it almost as a challenge because I'm kind of so proficient at the insight and the impression. So it's fun to me. It's like when people laugh, it's great. And when people are like really in an uncomfortable space, it's funny too, because it works. It's really more of a meta special without being too kind of hoity toity about it. And Mitch McConnell introduces him. And on my Patreon, I put Mitch McConnell's full set on his MC set on my Patreon. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it was a good sort of showcase, but also doing something different with it that kind of, you know, made me happy. Sometimes it's also for me.
Well, no, what you do,
and the title highlights both the racism and the stupidity. I thought that's why I really liked the title I came up with.
What you do is you really, it's a remarkable thing how you riff, and I've noted this before, but I'll just again, you riff as Trump. Now, obviously, in your stand-up special, you have, you know, a prescribed strategy to get from here to there, you know, comedically and all the rest, and from a performance standpoint. But your riffs as Trump just are, they're unreal. I mean, they'll go, you know, your typical shorts are maybe 3 minutes or whatever it is, and then I've seen shorter ones, of course, in different reels or et cetera. But that's a kind of a stream of consciousness thing, right? You get into that character, and somehow you find the funny.
Yeah, and the challenge with the special that I gave myself was that I really wanted to stick more to a kind of somewhat rigorous set list while giving myself obviously room, because I could get up and talk for 45 minutes as him and it would be funny and it would be kind of what people expect. I wanted this to be a little bit more of a disciplined performance of like, no, what if Trump were doing stand-up comedy? Not what if I'm doing a joke as Trump, but like, what if it were Trump himself? So yeah, it was a lot of fun and the response has been very good to it. So I'm hoping, obviously, some people have said, I really don't want to watch the man anymore. And I get that, but I certainly don't really take care or respect with the man.
No, it's great. I mean, and I think the mockery associated with Donald Trump that JL does is exactly what you want. I mean, and we get a lot of it on this show. Please don't put Trump in the thumbnail for the show. Please don't play any of his press conference. I don't want to hear any of his inauguration comments. I get it. And I try to, be very careful and considerate about how much we play and whatever, because there are so many people who feel that way. On the other hand, he is president and he's turning the country on its side. Yeah. I'm not going to ignore him, nor should we avoid the kind of mockery and humor that I think you do so well. I mean, I think that's one of the best ways to skewer him.
Yeah, he's, but man, it's watching what's going on right now. You're just sort of like, how is anybody surprised? How is anybody? And I've said, and I get that this comes from a place of privilege, but I really do partly believe that the only cure to Trump, I wrote a joke recently, which was like, we had all the vaccines for Trump, the Justice Department, impeachment, the election, but we've decided we need to go natural immunity, apparently, with Trump. So much like Bobby F. Kennedy, we need Trump to go wild and on democracy. And then people might see. And the sad thing with that solution is that a lot of people are going to get hurt. A lot of people will have their lives ruined or worse. But I don't think this country at this point, with the lack of attention, the navel gazing into our smartphones, the sort of ease with which we both sides things to a ridiculous level, and that people can tell me that, like, Kamala Harris, nobody voted for her in a primary, so therefore you'll elect by the way, Trump in blackface. Nobody's talking about that either. That is an offensive amount of bronzer. That is actually, he is going as Aladdin to this year's press conference.
He did crank up the bronzer to 10 on this press conference.
Oh my goodness. Right. Yeah. But it's I do partly believe that the only way America will learn, in a way, because all we did, like I don't know if I said this the last time I was on, but with Miles Taylor, all the deep state people, all the people who were, he wrote that anonymous column saying, we're taking orders away from him, we're not letting him do this or that. And I thought, that's bad. Like that's bad constitutionally, and it somehow made Trump seem less harmful than he is. And now the counter to this is January 6th should have been all we needed, because that was pretty much one of the worst things ever in this country.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. So I don't know if it just, you need to, realize that climate change, burning up your fields and your kids being on opioids and your family going bankrupt and not being able to afford any groceries, et cetera, is what's needed until people go, hey, maybe Trump isn't that good. But I don't know, it'll just make the Trump movement feel, I think, somewhat palatable or manageable if we don't get the full. So it'll live on in various forms if we don't get a sort of unadulterated, pure fentanyl level of Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you put it that way, because it is the case that, there were those in his first term who were saying, as long as the economy is more or less okay, this guy probably is going to get a second term. And then COVID hit, and you realize the chaos that had been part of the first couple of years of the administration was played out with the pandemic, where, he'd already destroyed the plan to how to handle a pandemic. And, he put to the sort of pro forma, theater of people together that were going to be the guys handling the pandemic, when of course they had nothing to do with it. There was actually a shadow group led by Kushner that was handling, and it was involving a lot of payouts and handouts, and there was a Hunger Games about getting PPE and other stuff. I mean, the states had to fight between them. So
Russia got some, though. Let's not forget, Russia, our 51st state, did get PPE from Trump. So it wasn't all bad.
Somebody asked, how do we see the Spears? Robert says, how do we see the special? I don't know if you can answer that question, JL.
It's on YouTube. It's free. It's on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JL Cauvin. I think I gave the link directly to the special, maybe to Kim, I believe, in an email.
So we'll put the link to the special under this video, okay,
Great.
to make it easy.
Thank
I
you.
always feel like I get the in Cauvin, but I don't get the van in Cauvin.
Oh, that's okay. No, as long as you don't put an L. A lot of people want to just put in an L or an H. I was getting called Chauvin a lot during the pandemic, and I go, nope, I just do comedy. He killed somebody. But that would explain why my ticket sales were mediocre. It's like, wait, Derek Chauvin is performing here? Have some class, Pittsburgh Improv.
But is it Cauvin?
Yes.
Okay, Cauvin. Okay, I got it from now on.
And if you want to be really hoity-toity to make my deceased father proud, Jean-Louis Cauvin. See, now I sound...
Of course, it's
now I sound
it's
weak
French.
and anti-American with a name so French.
What? Look, we love our time with you. Come visit again.
Sure
as
thing.
I say, we'll have a link to the comedy special. Inauguration is my favorite N-word. And I love the premise. I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I love the premise, and I love that you're, rigorously adhering to the premise, which is really a cool thing. That
Sometimes, you just have to challenge you challenge yourself, or you'll get. I could keep doing the same thing, and it will be funny and somewhat original. But I really wanted something that could just, give me an extra pleasure rather than just punching in at the Trump impression office.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. I'm sure for you, yeah. You've got 4 years of this stuff now. Let's hope.
Yay!
4 years, and we look forward to more. Okay, so come visit again.
Yes,
You're
sir.
a great
Thank
friend
you.
of the show.
Great
Yeah,
voice
love it.
still. I know you still have a great voice. I love it.
Thank you, Jay. I'm going to hang on to it for our next visit. JL Cauvin, how about it? See you, my friend.
Do you feel it? It's the Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Yeah, thank you. Big thank you and shout out to our Patreon and PayPal supporters. You keep the show growing and going. You can be a supporter with a one-time or even monthly contribution at themarkthompsonshow.com. There are click-throughs to Patreon and PayPal. They're at themarkthompsonshow.com. With our website, you have to put the there. You can't just put markthompsonshow.com. You have to put themarkthompsonshow.com. And the reason for that is that there is a Christian ventriloquist named Mark Thompson, and he has a website, markthompsonshow.com. So you got to go to themarkthompsonshow.com. Although, as I've told you before, who can't love Christian ventriloquism, everyone? Yes. And so if you want to support him, that's fine with me too.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
We're the ones who need your love, though. themarkthompsonshow.com, Patreon or PayPal. And of course, there are Patreon or PayPal links, hot links underneath all our videos. Albert is here. Kim is here. We have discussed the crash in Washington. The amount and tonnage of things we have to get to is substantial. Still to come, one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world, Daid Katz, will talk about what's going on at the federal government level. Remember, Katz used to be with the federal government. He was a federal prosecutor. Now he works the defense side of the table. But as a federal prosecutor, he knows very well what's going on in the Justice Department and everything adjacent to the Justice Department and justice system, meaning the Kash Patel confirmation hearings and the questions surrounding even DNI, the Gabbard intelligence position. So all of these things that are in play are things that Daid Katz has a pretty good perspective on, and I'll be looking forward to talking to him about that. Should I go? I'm hemming and hawing because I saw a story that Kim loves. She really loves Gold Bar Bob.
I really do.
And she was really rooting for his takedown. And Gold Bar Bob is Senator Bob Menendez. You remember he was Democrat, okay? So Democrats are not to be on corruption at all. He, a Democratic senator from New Jersey, and discovered when they raided his house a bunch of cash and pockets of various jackets and coats. I mean, big amount of cash. And they discovered a bunch of gold bars and a luxury car vehicle. As they began to peel back the onion, there was every sort of, it was like the Showcase Showdown at Price is Right, but imagine it with gold bars, and imagine it as a payoff.
From a foreign country.
Yeah. Wasn't it Turkey?
Yes.
Yeah. The public cannot be led to the belief that you can get away with bribery, fraud, and betrayal, said District Judge Sidney Stein. The quote continues from the judge. I don't know what led you to this. Greed was certainly part of it, but that can't be it. I don't think that explains everything. Hubris was part of it. I don't know. You'll have to try to figure that out yourself over time. And he will have time to figure it, Kim, because he's going away for 11 years.
What?
I know.
Can we just focus on that for a minute? Gold bars in his pockets, luxury vehicles in the garage, wads of cash from a foreign country. 11 years?
Sounds
That's
like
it?
my perfect Airbnb. I would love that kind of
11
place.
years.
Yeah.
That's all you get for betraying America and scooping up gold bars. That's it? And
Who
you know
doesn't
he's-
have gold bars scattered around the house, says Nancy. Yeah, well, I guess it may be true.
I mean,
it's a thing.
11 years is like it feels like a slap on the wrist. Yes, he's going to jail. He'll probably get out with good behavior. I'm betting, if I had to do a prediction, that maybe he'll serve 5 years. Then he'll be out and he'll be able to spend all of his money that he's got probably saved in some offshore account. This is not a punishment.
Kim loves her Gold Bar Bob, but she would like to see him die in prison. I'm going to
Thank
say
you.
it. That's what she wants.
Am I
Yeah.
wrong? I mean, come on.
He was convicted last year, 16 felony counts. Long-running corruption scheme. It's certainly true. His idea was, I'll take the gold bars and I'll take the luxury vehicles and I'll give them some legislative favor and money associated with their businesses because of my control as a U.S. Senator.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Well, it did work for a while. I mean, they were driving around that luxury car and spending those wads of cash for a while before they were caught.
11 years. That's it? Hey, if that's all, then, maybe it's worth it to betray America. Go ahead.
Wow, I don't know. I mean,
Good day, sir.
I think it's, I think 11 years is a long time.
No, it's
I think you
not.
want to check the calendar. 11 years is a really long time.
You know what they should have done? 11 years per million that you stole.
Okay. She is the tough judge. That's our Kim. I mean, look, you only if you come to the yeah, chit, right? Exactly. She's the chitter, and so
I blame you.
Exactly. Kim
You
is
can almost see
tough.
it. You know the cartoons when a cartoon character sees gold and their eyes get really big and widen. You can almost see that with Gold Bar Bob. 11
Bar
years.
Bob.
Ridiculous.
Meantime, on the other side of town, there is a new White House reporter who is turning heads with a racy outfit that she's wearing. I guess her name is Natalie Winters. She's a new White House correspondent. Kim mentioned to you the other day that they are going to increase the breadth of those allowed to be White House correspondents. So now, if you are from what they call independent media, they're going to allow you in.
She's with Steve Bannon's War Room. Okay, this is not a news person.
I see. I didn't know that. She's a War Room correspondent
She's
from
really
Steve
pretty,
Bannon's.
though. She's beautiful. She's a very beautiful girl.
Yeah.
Kim, how are you?
All right. So she is set to
not
cover
woman.
the second term of the Trump administration, and she is officially a White House correspondent. And the reason we know that is because of her Instagram. Albert, do you not want to put it up there? Is there a reason we're not putting it up there? She is, it's right there in the story. And she is a hottie, as the kids say.
Yeah, she's a nice looking girl.
Yeah, there she is on her
Yeah.
Instagram. And the Instagram was, I'm now a White House reporter, and I work in the White House. And she was wearing a very provocative outfit. And yeah.
See, I thought she looked professional.
I thought so
until
too.
you-
I don't know. People didn't.
That's fine until you pan out. And then
it's a very short skirt.
See, the skirt is short, but she's also wearing tennis shoes with a skirt, which isn't very professional. She looks like she's going to a cheerleading competition, but that's fine. Whatever.
Well, you know what, Kim? This is the girl-on-girl crime that I don't like when you guys start criticizing each other's looks. And I'm just saying, I think she looks fine. I don't think the tennis shoes or sneakers have anything to. I mean, I applaud that because it's tough on your feet to walk around in those heels.
Yeah,
come on.
You're going to the White House. This is not a day at Disneyland. But also, I will say this.
Wow, Kim is really going to town on her.
Kim, how are you?
More than what she has on, which whatever, that's fine, and more than the selfies from the White House bathroom.
Right.
It's her content. I mean, she's just ugly and vicious, just like the rest of the MAGA world.
Yeah.
And this is your new White House correspondent.
Well, she's beautiful. I am going to say, if I got to get my ugly and nasty from somebody, I want to get it from her. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Just to speak for the
Kim, how are you?
All right,
she's like the woman or the mean girl in every high school movie. You know, the one you love to hate, but that's just so beautiful that she's the most popular, but she's vicious and has a dark soul.
Wow. Yeah, well, Julie agrees with you.
Yeah.
Ugly on the inside, says Julie.
Right. That's right.
Does she have an OnlyFans account? LOL, says Underdog. Yeah. His next wife, says Daniel Sanchez. Denise Richards lookalike, says Phineas. She does have that's a great point. Good on you, Phineas, for picking that comparison. I think that's true. Well, anyway, I haven't seen her reports, but Kim has monitored them, and she does not approve. And certainly doesn't approve of the wardrobe, which she feels is disrespectful. I don't know. Anyway, that's what's happening on a superficial level at the White House.
Have this girl, who's so ridiculous, in the same room as real hard-hitting professional journalists, and it's laughable.
Well, they're getting rid of the real hard-hitting professional journalists. I mean,
that was happening?
That's This is a temporary kind of crossover period, but they'll be gone pretty soon.
Sayonara, truth to power.
The social media giant Meta has agreed to pay $25 million to settle a lawsuit filed by President Donald Trump, of course. Trump and others claimed their Facebook accounts were unlawfully shut down or even blocked at the urging of the U.S. government. There were direct negotiations between Zuckerberg and Trump and the Trump lawyers. There were talks between the two of them, and they got to this settlement because I think it's been 2 years of back and forth, and the Meta people felt like just the way ABC and CBS and others are succumbing to the legal pressure and to the reality of the political pressure and power of the Trump administration, it's just easier to write the check for $25 million. And that's exactly what they decided to do, although they settled on $22 million that they'll be paid to a fund to support the contract and the agreements made to build the Trump library, and the other $3 million of the $25 million, so $22 million to the construction project, $3 million is going to 4 people who joined Trump in that lawsuit filed in 2021.
It looks like just an extension of the $1 million that Zuckerberg gave the inauguration fund. You know, the timing of this settlement seems suspect. It seems like they're just all getting in line. Give the man what he wants.
And ABC News agreed to pay that $15 million to resolve the libel suit that Trump brought over the George Stephanopoulos remarks on the air, saying that the jury found Trump liable for the R word in the case brought by E. Jean Carroll. And then CBS settling with the president over the editing of a 60 Minutes interview with Vice President Kamala Harris. Both of these were very winnable cases, but because of pressure and because of the realities confronting both these media giants and others. I mean, we talk about media giants. Meta has a lot of not only regulatory business in front of the U.S. government, but remember, Meta is positioning themselves in the form of Zuckerberg, who attended the inauguration, as Kim said, wrote the check. They are positioning themselves to try to be participants in the acquisition of TikTok. So if you want to be in that conversation, since it obviously is going to be awarded to either a consortium of these tech bros or a handful of these tech bros, however they're going to put it together, if you want to be in that conversation, you don't want to be in a lawsuit with Trump and fighting him.
Be on the wrong side of a Trump lawsuit right now? No way.
Exactly. So everybody's caving and everybody's paying. I mean, it's really a shakedown. It is probably the cleanest shakedown that this administration can possibly conceive of. So the Trump-Musk buyout, that is a push to gut the federal workforce. Apparently, it's less Trump and more Musk. Elon Musk working behind the scenes on an initiative aimed at depleting the civil service. It may be illegal. We'll talk to Daid Katz about that. But Musk is the one who has gone after the federal workforce and had the idea of these buyouts. We talked about the buyouts yesterday, talked about the lack of legality associated with them, primarily because there's no money that's been allocated for this. When it comes to money, it all has to go through Congress. At least that's the way it's worked traditionally. I want to make a very, I think, important point, and I'll be curious to know whether you agree, but it seems to me that this administration, and they're doing it right away, is going after a kind of power of the unitary executive that has been unprecedented, where we talked about the impoundment, the blocking of the distribution of funds that have already been allocated. And what's happening now is a seizing of that power from Congress by the Trump administration. Now, remember, his director of the Office of Management and Budget is the same guy who was the director under his first term. He's also the same guy who is a leader in Project 2025. That guy, Vogt, remember, V-O-U-G-H-T, I think he pronounces it Vogt or Vought, he has real control over this money. And the idea is that even those agencies and even those programs that have been funded have to go to OMB now under the control of this guy, and he will decide what programs will actually get those funds, get any funds, or get a portion of those funds. Well, we didn't vote for that guy. He's not even Trump. I mean, at least Trump's got supporters. Vaught's just some guy was put in there at OMB. Now he's going to control all the spending that's already been approved by Congress? It's insane. And it's illegal. So what's happening now? Make no mistake about it, because I know there's so much stuff going on. It's sort of like the DEI hires and is the government buyouts and all the rest of this stuff. What's going on? Well, just try to focus on a handful of things. This, to me, is the creep associated with what they want, which is the power seized from Congress and essentially moving it all to the executive and the executive's hench people. In this case, it's a vote at OMB. But Musk is the one who went after the 2.3 million federal workers and offered the buyouts. He moved so quickly, as mentioned here in a Post report. The Washington Post did some good reporting on this, to try to exert control over the Office of Personnel Management. That's the agency that acts as sort of the human resources department for the federal government. And there were policy agencies, provisions that were implemented. And, he went after this quite aggressively. So Musk's team, those who ran human resources for SpaceX, who worked at Musk's artificial intelligence firm, they've been installed in senior leadership roles in downtown Washington. And Musk's team was also critical to building the system that sent that email out to offer federal employees this choice of the buyout.
I was reading that they're these tech guys that are right out of high school and college interns. Like, they're super, super young.
Well, you'll remember this also. I was almost going to get Albert to pull it. But what did I say about this? I said, this is literally, I think, a quote from what I said. These buyouts, the trail of breadcrumbs leads right back to Musk. I promise you, this is a Musk tech bro idea. He wants to get rid of the federal government workforce. These are the buyouts. And sure enough, look at this. A day later, the reporting, it does. It all goes back to Musk and, as you say, his high school supporters who are there in government as well.
Even the letter that was sent out is apparently has some of this very similar wording to the Twitter letter.
Crazy.
Yes.
Crazy. So there is a lot going on in Washington, I know. But keep your eye on the ball because, as I say, the fire hose of stuff coming out of the Trump administration can be a little overwhelming, but there is stuff that you should worry about, and there's stuff that you shouldn't worry as much about. This is the stuff you should worry about. The coring out of government and the reduction and elimination of the regulatory structure, the structure that protects us, consumers. It protects us from bankers going nuts. It protects us from corporate polluters going nuts, intoxifying the land, the water, the air. There's a lot here, and a lot of it's going away. And the last thing I will say about Musk, and then I'll get to Daid Katz, is that Musk, as you know, because we've talked about it on the show, has been in a lawsuit with regulatory agencies of the United States government. Why? Again, I'll remind you, because of the absolute toxification of the area around a lot of the SpaceX launches and a lot of what he's done even with Neuralink. That's the put the chip in people's heads research. He's violated all kinds of laws with Neuralink. Most of them have to do with animal cruelty. An extraordinarily awful series of things goes on in those Neuralink labs. I mean, just positively horrifying. And even the tepid animal protection laws, they're in violation of those. But the Environmental Protection Agency is also in a suit with Trump. I mean, I'm talking about like $600 million. It's a lot of money for the pollution associated with his SpaceX launches and some of the SpaceX development. So now he's in control of all of these agencies. It's no wonder he wants to core them all out. To be continued.
The Mark Thompson Show.
One of the great analysts in the English-speaking world when it comes to legal affairs is our guest on Thursdays. You can hear him if you're in England. You can hear him on London radio and also television there in the UK. And across this great land, he's on Fox News, News Nation, and television stations across the country. How about it for our visitor on Thursdays, the former federal prosecutor now working the defense side of the table, Daid Katz. Hello, sir.
Great to be with you.
David, I wanted to get your thoughts about a couple of things that are going on today, and I'm talking about the confirmation process. I was telling people in the first hour who might have been passing through that you're someone who's worked in the Justice Department. You worked in the federal government. You've seen a lot. And so when we look at the questioning of Kash Patel, for example, or Tulsi Gabbard, who's going to be, she's now being nominated to run the intelligence community, there's a lot here that I feel like you have a perspective on that we may not. I was going to play you, Albert. Can you play for David the Patel stuff? It's a quick back and forth between Cory Booker and Patel, and maybe I just like your take on this. This is Cory Booker questioning Kash Patel.
Any commitments to anyone about pursuing any investigations or targets if you are FBI director?
Only violent criminals and terrorists.
Have you had any conversations with anyone on the transition team about pursuing any investigations or targets?
Only following the Constitution.
Again, are you certain?
That I've told people on the
Are you certain? Have you had any conversations with anyone on the transition team about pursuing any investigations or targets?
Senator, to the best of my recollection, I've only said I will use the Constitution.
Have you discussed specific investigations or targets you would pursue as FBI director with the President of the United States?
Senator, to the best of my recollection, no.
Are you certain?
To the best of my recollection, no.
According to public reports, you were subpoenaed by the federal prosecutors to testify as a witness before the grand jury investigation investigating the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. And you testified before the grand jury, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you were before the grand jury, you pled the fifth on the basis of self-incrimination, correct?
I utilized my constitutional rights during that process with the advice and consent of counsel and appeared before that grand jury.
I will take that as a yes. And you are familiar, I imagine, with Section 6002 of Title 18.
Off the top of my head, Senator, not.
Well, Section 6002 is the immunity statute. Whenever a witness refuses to testify or provide other information before a grand jury based upon the privilege against self-incrimination, the court can order the witness to testify. The witness must comply with the order, but they receive immunity, which means that no testimony or any other information provided before the grand jury can be used against them in any criminal proceeding. You were compelled to testify as a witness in the Mar-a-Lago classified document case. Did you participate in any criminal conduct involved in that case?
Involved in which, the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case?
Yes.
No, I testified through compulsion by court order.
You received immunity for providing information that was self-incriminating. Do you remember the name of the prosecutor who questioned you?
There were multiple, Senator. I do not.
Was it one of the people, were any of them people that were fired this past week?
I have no idea, Senator.
Are you certain? You're under oath.
I'm aware that I'm under oath, Senator, and I have no idea, and I did not participate in the removal of any DOJ prosecutors.
What was the information you provided that you received immunity for?
Senator, I would love my grand jury testimony to be released, but as you know, that grand jury testimony has been sealed by the Department of Justice, and I'm not allowed to discuss it here.
Well, I find it troubling that you do not know the law here, and let me tell you what the law is. Rule 6 governs grand jury proceedings. Under Rule 6E, grand jurors, court reporters, and prosecutors are bound to secrecy. But witnesses are not bound by secrecy. You were a witness in the classified documents case. You are not bound by secrecy. You can tell us everything that happened in that room and everything you testified about. I'll ask you again, what information did you provide to the grand jury?
In this, we are agreement, Senator. Get my grand jury testimony. I want it made public. I asked the Department of Justice to make it public, and they refused to do so.
There is no legal bound against you telling us right now what you testified to.
When I asked for my transcript to be released,
Sir, did you or did you not commit a crime?
Senator, I did not commit a crime.
Then why won't you tell us what you testified to?
Because it occurred over the course of 3 weeks. I don't have the ability to recall everything I testified to, but I'm asking you to put my transcript out.
Did you testify to witnessing the President of the United States declassifying documents?
Senator, what I testified to is best captured by that transcript in real time. So
you're not willing to tell Congress, after making many pledges today about transparency, whether or not you testified to witnessing the President of the United States declassify documents. In the name of all the values you have said today, did you or did you not testify to witnessing the President of the United States declassify documents?
I testified accordingly and under oath, and I encourage you to get that transcript.
And by the law of our land,
you can see where that's going. But I wanted to get, I really wanted a lawyer as I was listening to this. So you're our lawyer, David Katz. Tell us what's going on.
Well, Senator Booker did an excellent job there. You know, it's very hard to try to corral one of those witnesses because, they come in there and they play games and they evade and they know that, you're going to run out of time as the questioner. It's not like in a courtroom where you can get to the end of each relevant point. They're very time limited. So, of course, they try to, someone like Kash Patel tries to just talk around, dance, and wait until Booker's time has run out. The questioning itself was excellent because that is the fact. We always hear about how grand jury testimony is secret. That's usually because the defendant in the case, who's been indicted by the grand jury, wants to hear what the witnesses had to say. They want to hear what the special agent, let's say for the FBI or the IRS, had to say to the grand jury, and what questions the grand jury might have had. Because even though they will indict a ham sandwich, they'll sometimes ask some pretty good questions before they indict the ham sandwich. And a defense attorney would like to know what the queries were from the grand jurors. But on top of that, there may be informants who've testified. There may be people like that. And of course, a criminal defense attorney wants to get that testimony. However, we keep very, very secret grand jury testimony. Cory Booker just made the great point that a witness has a First Amendment right to talk about whatever the witness talked about in the grand jury and whatever the witness was asked in the grand jury. So Patel had no right not to answer those questions. And if that's really his position, Mark, that he wants to be the head of the FBI, but he doesn't have the recollection to remember some months ago what he himself testified in front of the grand jury, of course, that's totally disqualifying. That would make him, even less of that would make him an even dimmer bulb than Hegseth, right? If he doesn't remember what he himself testified, he doesn't want to get into that apparently because what he testified to after getting immunity. So this man wants to be the head of the FBI who decided that he should plead his rights under the Fifth Amendment. And, people always say, if you took the Fifth, you must have done something wrong. If you took the Fifth, you're a lowlife. Well, here's a guy who wants to be the head of the FBI, and yet he asserted his rights under the Fifth Amendment, which he has a right to do under the Constitution. But we have the right, as people who live under our Constitution, to have our senators not affirm such a person, right, to be the head of the director of the FBI. But on top of that, Mark, then he apparently, once he was given immunity. Now, immunity means that you have to testify despite the Fifth Amendment, because the immunity means that your testimony will not incriminate you. You've been given immunity. So then he had to testify. And apparently what he said was that he had seen now President Trump, then the person hoarding those documents down at Mar-a-Lago and not giving them back. He'd seen criminal misconduct. And since he himself could have been involved in that criminal misconduct, that was why Kash Patel needed to assert his rights under the Fifth Amendment. That was why his lawyer held out for immunity for him, so that Kash Patel, they couldn't turn around and indict him for the criminality that he was being forced to admit that he had done along with Trump, or that he'd seen Trump commit and yet hadn't blown the whistle, or had been, made some misleading comment about it. I want to say this about Kash Patel again. That job was not open. There was a 10-year term. Christopher Wray had that job for a 10-year term. He was picked by Trump during Trump's first term. Biden, like the good institutionalist he was, he kept Wray through thick and thin. He kept Wray through the FBI investigation of his own son, of the so-called Biden crime family, of Senator Menendez in New Jersey, who was a key vote, through all the things that hurt the Democratic administration, because the rules are the rules. And then as soon as Trump gets in there, he fires or makes it clear that he's about to fire the FBI director. And on balance, Mark, the FBI director, I just think he probably made the right call. He should have gone out more noisily. Right. But for the FBI and its reputation, I think that it might have been the better part of valor not to go down totally swinging, especially because Trump is so vindictive. And so, yes, that would have been the right and noisy way to go out. Would Trump have kneecapped the FBI, since he doesn't care about the nation and our security? Yes, he would have kneecapped and destroyed and done awful things to the FBI, which would have lessened the security of the American people when it comes to terrorism, drug trafficking, the cartels, all white-collar crime, environmental crimes, all the things that the FBI investigates. In his fury for vengeance, Trump would have kneecapped that agency and would have hurt all of our security. So that's why I think the better part of valor was probably for Wray to go. But to have him put in there, I've said this before, that Democrats after Patel, if somehow Patel gets in there, they have to wake up and realize that the FBI director goes with the president. And when the Democrats take power again in 4 years, and by now it's become very clear, can you believe how unpopular Trump has been? how many terrible things that he's done. He's lost the Latinos who swung to him. Guess what? The Latinos who swung to him because they thought the price of eggs would go down and they'd keep a few more tax dollars. They realized that the migrants are so terrified to even go out and to go to school. All of these little mom and pop places whose owners voted for Trump, they're all going bankrupt because the migrants won't even go out and buy a sandwich now. They're so terrified they won't take their kids to school.
Yeah, the repercussions and ripple effects we've talked about, and we talked about them before Trump even took office. I mean, the dark economy associated with all of this workforce that shows up in slaughterhouses and agricultural fields and sanitation working environments and beyond, as you say, just in back rooms and kitchens and support staff in these various ma and pa operations. It's all going to collapse without that workforce, and that workforce is real, and it will have a real effect, and there'll be big ag. They have a place at the lobbying table in Washington, and I'm sure they'll make their case to Washington. But as you say, there's going to be a lot of damage in the meantime. In the future, and I'll put this just as a back burner item, I mean, I have serious questions about whether or not there will be another election that the Democrats could actually win. I think the system is being gamed substantially. Now, I know you're going to probably put me in a conspiracy theory category for this, but it's not being done in a hidden way. In fact, Greg Palast is joining us. I think it's February 6th. I thought it was today, but it's going to be February 6th. And he's going to, in his film, Vigilantes, Inc., details this, but he will detail, even in this last election, how they disenfranchise voters. I mean, the voter suppression is unbelievable. They simply remove voters from major voting rolls. I'm talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of votes, David, in various states. Again, I'll double back to this, but when you say in 4 years, I think you're right. The sentiments of the country won't be with Trump. But, the sentiments with the country probably aren't with Putin. The sentiments of the country aren't with Viktor Orban. You get where I'm going. I mean, I think that these the sentiments of the country maybe not matter. Is what I guess I'm getting to.
But so someone like Viktor Orban or Putin, and I've heard people say, get ready to live in Putin's America, but the ability that they control, that they terrorize the population because of their federal systems. And we have a basically state-based system of things like law enforcement and so forth. And the ability to which they can really snuff out press criticism. There's nothing like that here. I mean, we have the New York Times going full bore, publishing what it publishes. They were never intimidated. Bezos wants to get his, whatever his space thing next to Musk's space thing. And I have such a low opinion of Bezos. I know he'd tell you, I'm losing money on the Washington Post. I didn't want to lose any more. And that was why I kissed his behind and did an about face. This guy in the LA Times, all I can say about the LA Times, guys, is please keep reading the LA Times. But, the owner of the LA Times, you can just look it up. There's 3 or 4 stocks that are a huge, big deal to him. And if you tell your pension fund, I don't want to hold the stocks that are propping up, the LA Times owner, that would have a real impact. I mean, people could divest those stocks. They could not, he wants to have all these mining rights that he needs Trump for and stuff like that. That's one company. That's one company that's trying to get the mining rights. Tell your pension fund, tell whatever, don't buy it. Just like people are doing with Tesla. I don't know who's showing up with a Tesla at a party and saying to all their cool friends, I just got a Tesla. But the only guy I know with a Tesla told me, I bought this thing 4 years ago. It took 4 years to have it delivered. And here it is, the big ugly tank, what's it called? Car truck. What is that?
That's the Tesla. Yeah, the Tesla pickup. Yeah,
it's so ugly. It's astonishing. One was just sitting next to me at a red light the other day, and it's grotesque.
Yeah, I drive a Tesla, but I've had it for years. And
well, you're okay, Mark.
No,
Mark,
I'm looking.
You're always okay with me.
But to your point, I'm looking to get a different, because now all of a sudden it's become my brand. I didn't think that when I drove up to some restaurant, in my car, whatever the hell it is, it's somehow my brand. It's reflective of my values and all that. I had no idea. So
people are looking to see if you have a blood diamond.
Yeah, thank you. So, but just to put a button on that. When so many people, and I said this on the show at the time, were dumping their Washington Post subscriptions because of Bezos's decision not to allow an endorsement by the editorial page. That was ridiculous to me. I know that people did it. I have a lot of friends who are journalists who did it. It's stupid. If you want journalism, which is already an endangered species in this country, the kind of reporting at the Washington Post is real reporting. I get it. The editorial editors weren't allowed to publish their endorsement of Kamala Harris. What the F ever, okay? The same is true of the LA Times. I'm with you, David Katz. I get it. I support them. I get home delivery. You know, I'm old school, so I read the paper, you know, the actual paper. It's kind of a pain in the A, but I do it that way. And that is real journalism. It has to be supported. Otherwise, you're going to be at the hands of, you know, whoever's podcasting with Joe Rogan that day. Maybe it'll be dependable. Maybe it won't be. You just don't really know. I wanted to ask you about what's happening in the legality of what we were talking about with OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. They want to essentially take over the decision-making as to what happens with many of these programs that have been funded. That was the whole thing where there's a freeze on funding. It's called impoundment. You stop this government funding, but it's, to me, completely illegal. I mean, the idea somehow that you could take money that's already been appropriated for various programs and for various parts of the landscape of government and somehow stop it out of fiat there from the guy who runs OMB, who happens to be part of Project 2025, or that it could be stopped by the executive, in this case, Donald Trump. Isn't that patently illegal?
It is illegal. And I think that we're seeing how essential our federal courts are, you know, the balance of power, the separation of powers, because he really hasn't gotten to, he's gotten to freak a lot of people out and terrorize a lot of people, especially the migrants, including some who've never committed any crime. I just have to throw this in, that when they did that $1 million military flight to show off how they were deporting people, they could have done like a $200,000 commercial flight, but they spent about $1 million, 5 times as much, this wasteful Trump government. And then it turned out that half the people who were on that flight, Mark, half the people had committed no crime at all. They were just people who'd crossed the border, which is a civil violation, and were working and paying taxes. Half the people in this so-called flight of the worst, half of them had committed no crime at all. They hadn't been charged with a felony or a misdemeanor or any crime, much less convicted. So anyway, returning to your point, the courts really stood up on this one. I mean, before that impoundment could go into effect, that one day that all the people with grants, and that was another horrible day that we've had since January 20th. I mean, people said we're doing a cancer investigation, and you can't come to work today because I don't know that I can pay you because we're doing the cancer research under a grant. This was beyond belief. The Meals on Wheels people couldn't serve a meal because they couldn't say to the vendor that you're going to get paid for the meal. It was terrible, but a federal judge stopped that within 24 hours. Hallelujah. And it doesn't matter anymore whether you go to a, quote, Trump judge, an Obama judge, a Clinton, a judge left around from Reagan or Bush. They all get it. Impoundment is illegal. Congress has the power of the purse. The good news is that even these feckless senators and Republican Congress members will stand up for the power of the purse, because if they ever lose that, the lobbyists won't show up anymore. No one will care about them. They'll be like the legislators in some of these third world countries where they have a nice little title and that's about it. The power of the purse is the game, and the legislators, the Congress and the senators know that. This
I love that. Don't. We'll look the other way on your grift, Mr. President, but don't get in the way of our grift.
Absolutely. But I think what's gonna happen there is that it hasn't been actually very well reported, because I think the OMB memo has been withdrawn, but this desire to impound goes on. I think they're going to litigate that in less than a week in front of that federal judge. And they're going to claim that they do have this power of impoundment in the executive branch. And just to make that very, very simple, it's simple. Congress doesn't say, go spend up to $1 million on this dam. What they say is spend $1 million on the dam. And then the president has to faithfully execute the laws and has to, once the bill is enforced. And remember, the president can veto a bill, but if the president, all these bills that are bills were signed by a president, either Trump the last time or Biden recently, these bills were all signed. They went through their law The law is spend $1 million on the dam. Now, if the dam is in California or in a blue place and Trump decides not to spend the money on it, that's something he can't do. If he just decides that, you know what, this river doesn't really need a dam, I'm going to do something else that costs $500,000, aren't I a hero? No, he can't do that either, because the final decision's made by Congress. There are some rare instances which his memo has cited, Trump's memo has cited, but all of those are cases where Congress said, you know, you can have $1 million for boats or decide not to buy the boats, or you can spend $1 million for the boats unless you can get them cheaper. None of those bills say that coming out of the Appropriations Committee that he's talking about. And the last thing that he can do, my God, to do something statesmanlike like this would never occur to Trump. You can go back to Congress and ask for what's called rescission. And you can say, you know what, we don't need to build that dam anymore. Why don't you rescind the authorization for $1 million? And if you think Congress or the Senate are going to rescind anything, are they going to grant any of those rescissions? First of all, it'll be in some congressman's district.
Exactly.
And if it's in 3 Republicans' districts, they're going to vote against it. All the Democrats will vote against it. The Senate, I'm not sure if it has to go through the filibuster or not. I don't think that's reconciliation, not rescission. So the reality is Trump is just screaming and yelling and disrupting. But, you know, a lot of what he does is because he scares people. And I know it's easy for me to say, you know, I'm a comfortable attorney, but the more that people stand up to him, most of it is rhetoric. It's just bluster. You know, these 2 million federal employees. I mean, I have my disputes with some of the assistant U.S. attorneys and some of the agents, you know, professional disputes. But let me step back and say, there are people who are dedicated to the public interest. They're trying to do the right thing. And anybody who steps aside because, well, I don't really agree with Trump, so I guess I should get out of the way. Are you kidding me? Anyone who thinks that they're going to actually pay that money, you know, they promised them 7 months of free money. They're going to give them 7 months of free money if they sign the Musk thing. And that's all for Musk. If they sign the Musk thing, resign. Apparently, if you get it and you're confused and you push resign and you send it back to the where you got the email from, whatever it is, that Office of Personnel Management or something, that crazy thing that 2 million federal employees got, just by signing resign and sending it back to them, I bet you they put you through hell like you can't believe. They say you've abandoned your post. They're never going to give you 7 months of free money.
Oh no, it's a total. That is total. It smacks of Musk, and it also has the one-dimensional superficiality of Trump, meaning there's a promise that will never be made good on. I mean, it's quite consistent. But I wanted to, yeah.
Would you stock my casino? Keep stocking it and keep stocking it with as much as you can, and I'll. Stock it as much as you can before I declare bankruptcy and don't pay you a nickel. Trump University, exactly. Trump University, $25 million or more worth of grift. You're going to get a big diploma that says Trump University, and you know what you can do with that, the use of that diploma. He had to pay $25 million on that one the last time around.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now he's shaking down various media organizations for the $25 million. I just talked about the fact that $25 million is going to be paid by Meta to settle a dispute with Trump right now. This is over suppressing information and the fact-checking associated with the last election. And they finally just decided to tap out and give the guy the $25 million, which is exactly what they're going to do. This idea, though, that this is the opening salvo from Vote, who is the Project 2025 guy running the Office of Management and Budget, in an attempt to claw back money and, more importantly, power about how money is spent. It's really concerning. You know, it's clearly an express strategy. And look, Vote hasn't even been confirmed yet. I don't think but he's already doing this before he's even in office. And I'm just wondering to what extent you've kind of outlined and made me feel a little bit better about the fact that you just don't think that Congress is going to go along with this parade, even that as they goose step about other stuff that Trump wants to do, or they look the other way. You feel as though there's too much at stake with congressional power for them to ever sit by and let this happen.
Right. They won't let this happen, and the courts will take care of it for them. It's clear enough that they have the power of the purse. There's all this precedent about these. None of these things sound very sexy, do they? Impoundment, rescission, and appropriation, which has a cap instead of a definite amount. But, you know, this is trillions of dollars of the budget. And of course, it's huge political retaliation, because you know that if Trump ever could run a system like that, his enemies would be, you know, paupered, and his friends would be greatly advantaged, and money would be put in their pocket. I think Meta probably has in mind, you know, you pay $25 million that way, and then, you know, some contract goes your way, some no bid contract, something that you get, you know, there's $100 million that can just fall off the plate into Meta's lap. And, you know, now we have such a corrupt government. Can you imagine if the Democrats were in power, how the Republicans would scrutinize every single one of these things that was going on? You know, Grassley was supposed to be this old Republican senator. I think he's 91. And he's been a champion for decades of the whistleblowers. We need whistleblowers. We need people to talk about fraud, abuse, and corruption in the government. Oh, the king of the inspectors general. We have to have inspectors general everywhere. Well, Trump fired 17 inspectors general in one fell swoop. And I think what Senator Graham said, that's not technically compliance with the law. Did you ever see anyone? Graham screamed and yelled when the Democrats would. I didn't technically abide by the law, because the law is absolutely clear that you have to give 30 days notice. So this person at the Agriculture Department, this Inspector General, fantastic reputation, I forget her name right now, she said, no, this is unlawful. There's a term, and we can only be removed for cause, and there has to be 30 days notice, and you struck out. All three of them were balls. None of them are relevant. None of them happened. I didn't do anything wrong. There's no cause to remove me. I have a term. I didn't get 30 days notice. Well, Monday, security at the Agriculture Department took her bodily out of the Agriculture Department, and she is the one who is conducting that investigation of Neuralink.
Right,
She's
Neuralink,
the
right.
General who's conducting that investigation of Neuralink. And the allegations are that animals were treated terribly in those animal experiments, which I guess they're allowed to do, but there are very strict rules. And the allegation is that Musk didn't follow them, that Musk told his people, we got to do this fast. We got to do this fast. Now, I know you want to figure out ways to make the surgery of the animal less painless, but no, do it fast. They're investigating that. And now they just ousted the Inspector General who was investigating Musk. Say the name again, Neuralink.
Neuralink, exactly.
Neuralink. And so there we go. And you know, these other inspectors general were all investigating things that are of great concern to Trump and his cronies. And that's what you'd like to do. If you're going to rob the bank, make sure the security system's not working and that there are no cops around.
Yeah, just so well said. Exactly. You know, he's doing something as well, and this is falling into this category of the vengeful agenda. There were a lot of people who said, I just don't think he's going to actually, I know that he, you know, smears people and talks trash to people, but he's not actually going to go after them. No. Yeah, he is. And he's done it in the past. He went after Vindman after the Ukraine testimony, and he's going after Mark Milley now. General Mark Milley, we saw him lift the security that Milley had. Also, this is the security that was enjoyed by John Bolton and others who have been part of legitimate efforts on the part of this country to eliminate that, and I mean rub out, I mean kill leaders of Iran. I mean, that Soleimani is the one I'm thinking of. And since then, there were expressed efforts to threaten all of the people associated with that, with getting rid of Soleimani, including Milley, Bolton, etc. So my question to you is, I think it's unprecedented that you'd go after a retired general like this. And there is a kind of, you can maybe explain the walling off of the military from, from government. And it's not a political appointment, I guess might maybe the way to put it. Can you speak to what's going on here and going after Milley? They're actually trying to begin an investigation against Milley, and I'm sure there'll be others to settle the scores, the political scores of the president.
Well, I recommended, and a lot of people recommended, that a pardon be given to General Milley by President Biden before he left office, and he did, and thank goodness, because at least Milley doesn't have to worry about a criminal lawyer or some trumped-up criminal investigation of him. Of course, I don't think I even need to say that he's one of the most honored, admired people in the United States. And, you know, I've known a lot of Republicans over the years. I worked as an assistant U.S. attorney under Republican presidents and Republican U.S. attorneys. And I can't think of one person I ever knew in my career, any Republican I ever knew in my career, who wouldn't think that this was awful. This is just absolutely, it's unlawful and it's awful. And this is what you want to encourage people to do, whether you agreed with our policy toward Iran or not, whether you agree that they should have taken out that top general who was, you know, in charge of terrorist operations. You can say he was a general. You should keep your hands off of foreign generals. But they didn't. Okay, Trump didn't, and the top people under Trump had a plan, and the plan was to manage to execute this very high Iranian general. And you know, Iran, if they had the power to do it, at least they were claiming what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you can go after one of our top generals, we're going to go after one of your top generals. So the idea that now we're not providing protection to someone like General Milley, who the Iranians are sworn enemy, especially if you listen to Trump. Nobody supposedly hates the Iranians and wants the Iranians to suffer more than Trump. And now they want to make this general who did this thing at Trump's direction, because Trump and the general thought it was a good idea. But, you know, Trump was the commander in chief who ordered it. So now to let his underling have to worry about being killed. That's what we're talking about. Being killed by assassins sent by Iran to kill him in retribution for his official action is awful. But what does Trump signify by that, along with the 1,500 pardons that he gave to the January 6 people? Don't ever cross me. You were my top general. You did something I wanted to be done, but you crossed me. You gave a speech that we don't say an oath to a would-be dictator. We say an oath to the Constitution. You ever say anything like that? And that's all of you. That's Hegseth. That's Patel. You ever turn on me? You don't indict the person I want indicted. You don't shoot at American demonstrators because I want you to. You're the head of the Department of Defense. Guess what? I'll pull your security detail one day if I can. So the people who say he's kind of like a mafia don, wasn't that Michael Cohen's thing?
Yeah.
That was Michael Cohen's thing.
Yeah. I mean, Trump is Tony Soprano if he become president. You know, that's the Military Times. I was reading an op-ed there just to follow up on the Milley thing. And, you know, it's just, they emphasize that partisan politics and the military should have nothing to do with each other. I mean, these are writers well familiar with the idea of a wall between the politics of government and then the functioning world of the Pentagon. But they write in the Military Times that there has been a shift. It's damaging, they say, to the U.S. Armed Forces reputation and also to the morale of the service members and the support of the United States citizens. The leadership stand down to address extremism in the force appears to have been designed in direct response to the January 6 riots at the Capitol building. So, you know, they have stopped essentially looking for the rise of white supremacists in the armed forces. This is a real issue. And they write in the Military Times quite strongly that this is a mistake. As every service member knows, perception is reality. Further evidence of emergent partisanship at the highest levels of the armed forces when service members are at, quote, every echelon questioned as to why the anti-extremism training has been created in response to the January 6 rioting and not the previous 8 months. It creates two very distinct groups, those who are doing the work of the new administration and those who are doing the work in allegiance to the Constitution. We talk about the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and these extremist groups that have been identified. I wonder to what extent this administration is going to look the other way on the rise of these groups in prominent leadership positions, maybe even in the military.
Well, the military does present a unique problem. I think it also has a unique solution that we have a long tradition of military allegiance to the Constitution, and we don't have coups in America. And I think that we have trained, you know, our military, especially the officers, that they do not follow an illegal order. And if people are demonstrating in Lafayette Park and an order goes out, shoot the demonstrators in the leg, you know, try not to kill them, shoot them in the leg, that they won't enforce that. And I think that that's right. I think that our military will stand firm. They have families, they're members of the community. That's not what we do. You know, we don't have the military carry out coups or shoot civilians. during demonstrations. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think outside of the military, I think one of these problems can be solved by rich blue states. Now, I know we have a lot of things to spend money on. We just had these huge fires. We need money from Trump out here for our relief efforts. We need money for everything in California. But there are some wealthy blue states, and these people who are denied security details, if they can't sue and get one, if they don't have like some pro bono security agency that will do it, I think that's a proper spending of money by California. I would sure vote for it. Let's assume Milley lives out in California. I would pay for his security detail. That's Trump denying him to try to intimidate people now that they better do his bidding and never stray from Trump's side, or else, whoever he's fighting now, I don't know. He wants to fight with Panama. He takes the Panama Canal, and the Panama Canal guy says, well, that's it. I'm going to be like Iran. And, it's also crazy, but it's not. You look at what Trump does. He wants to send that message. And, he's megalomaniacal, and he wants to send that message, and he's sending that message. But I think that, for his actions, the blue states should have reactions. The states are very rich. They're very strong. There's no reason that anybody he denies a security detail for, that a state like California, Maryland, New York, wherever the person lives, can't pay for that security detail. And if they live in a very, very red state, maybe they want to move to a blue state where their security detail is paid for. And maybe a blue state will pay for their security detail, even if it's in one of those red Trumpy states.
That's really a wild thought, and one that I hadn't even happened upon, the notion that they would just sort of be funded by one of these states that has an interest in upholding the tenets of protection around a great American hero in Milley.
Mark, I try to be original and not just derivative. Try to.
So let me just summarize as we finish up. You feel Congress isn't going to let the seizing of power when it comes to funding and stopping funding exist independent of their input. They're still going to be the administrative institution of record on this stuff.
Yes, that's a Katsadamas. That's a Katsadamas.
That's a Katsadamas. So do not worry about OMB. Yeah.
Unless the statutes, there'll be some particular statutes which say you can spend up to this limit, or there's some discretion in how you can spend these particular funds. But, a lot of it are still earmarked. Remember all the debates over earmarking?
Sure.
A lot of those funds are really earmarked. And, that Congress member from some red state, he doesn't like any spending except in his or her district. And you better spend it on that post office named for that Congress member from that red state, and not get all wishy-washy.
Yeah, that's how the military-industrial complex continues to thrive. They spread it around in all 50 states. There's a little something for everybody in that military budget. David, love our time together. We're wrapping up. We look forward to seeing and hearing you across the globe in all of the various outlets, but most of all, we favorite Thursdays when you come through here. Thanks again.
It's great being with you. I didn't have a chance to say hi to Kim, but hi, Kim.
Kim, say hello to your boyfriend, David Katz, please.
Hi, David Katz.
There you go. Kim is...
I used to have two wonderful girlfriends, you and, of course, Pat. I haven't seen Pat for a while, but we love Pat Thurston, and we love the radio station that shall not be named, Mark, and we loved you on it. We loved you on it.
Well, it is true that Pat is, and Pat is now with time to come through, because she's left KCBS Radio, so she's going to come through here and share her rage with all of us on a more regular basis. Thanks, David.
Can we overlap for 5 minutes on Thursday?
I'll try to get her on a Thursday. Absolutely. Didn't occur to me before. Thank you for suggesting that. Here, I'll give you a thank you. Thanks, David. Great insights. Thank you, Mr. Katz. Says Knit One, Pearl One. Hope you're okay with your home being damaged.
Yeah.
And
that's very nice of you to say. Where it takes a while, so many people have so much need out here. You can't even get the adjuster out there promptly because they're going to the fires and everything else. Luckily, we didn't have the fire, but we had a huge tree hit the living room and smash the roof. And
that's unreal. I didn't know. Wow, man. You can't get an adjuster out, really? That's crazy. I would think that they've hired, some additional adjusters to come out.
It's actually coming out tomorrow, Mark. Coming out tomorrow, but that's the earliest you could get him after the January 7th disaster.
Underdog says, Professor David Katz, I truly appreciate your dedication to advocating for everyone's constitutional rights. Thank you very much. That's very nice.
I may go back. I may follow David K. Johnston's lead and go back to professing.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
He's loving it. But you're still doing a lot of good. You need a defense attorney in a hurry. David,
I've got some. I've got some major federal cases right now. I'm a working lawyer, but I love Thursdays too and being on your show. So take care. I love your audience too. Thank you for all the nice
Look forward
comments.
to next time. David Katz, everybody. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is true, Albert, that our show has got a lot going on today, and in so doing, I think we're getting right up against the end. Just looking through various comments. Mark, people should be appointed by the people. It's true. Thanks, Eugenio de Arnal. It's very true, and that's why I was mentioning the OMB had this vote guy who was the Project 2025 guy. We don't vote for these people. We vote for Trump, those who did, and they end up appointing people, and then these people seize power. So you've got Musk and Vote both seizing a lot of power in government. You didn't vote for either one of those guys. Chaplain Fred says with a $20 super chat, thank you. Hi, Mark and Kim. I'm actually a hospice and LAPD chaplain. But all the love for you, Mark. I can totally say that the Anglican minister was very inappropriate. I guess he got his 5 seconds of fame. Yeah, if you missed it, there was an Anglican minister who gave the Sieg Heil salute as he was talking about, that America is the last bastion of support for the anti-abortion movement, and we have to continue to hang strong. And then he did the Sieg Heil. In the full clip, Musk turns and repeats the Sieg Heil. Yeah, exactly. We showed it here. He does it twice. So I completely agree. I think it seems pretty straightforward. But it is a fact that people try to explain away certain moments like that, largely because they can't believe anybody would publicly do it. I think that's the real thing behind it. It's not like they're trying to give Musk a pass. I think it's more that I don't believe he really did a Sieg Heil. You know what I mean? It's sort of like in that category. And I think, well, look at it. He did. I get it. It's like, I don't think, you'd blame this plane crash on DEI hires. That's absurd. Well, the president did it. He did it this morning. So it's sort of like you have to readjust, recalibrate for the madness that is overtaking this country and the dialogue around so many issues. Luis says, Trump blames DEI for the crash? What an a-hole. Sure, safety records will be awesome with his DUI hires. I'm sure he'll be hawking Trump Bibles honoring the victims, in quotes. Yeah. Never an opportunity missed to grift away. Kim, I'm going to offer you the opportunity to do a quickie news capsule here at the end.
Oh, okay.
News and commentary. But I also would give you, I know we're a little over time, give you the option to just go on to your show. I always love, I've told you before, I love the news, and so I love the news and commentary part. But
Bring it in.
Smash the like button if you would, guys. I haven't really had a chance to mention if you can subscribe to the show and show us some love that way, and smash the like button. It does help. Kim's news, and then we'll wrap up around here. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Sadly, officials fear 67 people were killed in the mid-air collision between an American Airlines jet and an Army Black Hawk helicopter in the Washington, D.C. area last night. Recovery efforts are underway to retrieve the bodies. At this point, there have been more bodies recovered from that crash site, and CNN is reporting that there was one air traffic controller working 2 different tower positions at the time of the crash. So I'm sure that will be investigated as well. The president is blaming previous administrations for lax air travel safety standards. He criticized former Presidents Obama and Biden for putting politics first. What? Trump went on to claim DEI policies lowered the standards for air traffic controllers. He said he will restore Americans' faith in air travel. Trump saying people need to be hired based on intellect and brain power. And maybe because they're white.
By the way, that was a rambling riff that he did at that press conference. So Kim's right. I mean, that copy, the news copy, reduces it to the essence of what he was saying, you know, blaming the prior administrations, talking about DEI hires. But to truly drink it in all its madness, you needed to see the riff. He just spews this stuff about DEI, about Pete Buttigieg, about, I mean, it's just insane. It's, you know, someone who knows no facts, just breaking out these grievances that he clearly has and fitting them into this tragedy somehow. It was just insane. I mean, truly unbelievable.
And yet I still try to remind myself this is what America wanted. More of President Trump's picks for key government positions grilled by Congress today. Kash Patel went before senators. He's been selected to lead the FBI. Tulsi Gabbard also underwent a confirmation hearing today in her effort to become the Director of National Intelligence. It was day 2 for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Capitol Hill, who already faced some pretty tough questions yesterday in his bid to become Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I don't know if you saw this one, Mark, where Tulsi Gabbard was asked if Snowden did anything illegal or if what he did was right. She would not answer the question. She was repeatedly asked over and over and over again, couldn't quite get that out. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, the ways in which they slither out of various questioning. We saw it with Patel. You'll see it with Gabbard. You'll see it with Kennedy, et cetera. Two things happen. There's the slither, which is what you're describing, where you don't answer or you filibuster answer, you word salady, knowing that they only have 5 minutes of questioning, or you lie, which is, for example, that's the Brett Kavanaugh, that's the all the Supreme Court justices, Thomas, et cetera. They all lie. So you've got both options. You can mix and match, do a little of lying, do a little of slithering. It's all the stuff that is standard issue. I would lastly say, though, those who say, it's all BS, they have the votes and they're just going through the motions. They're all, and no one, they shouldn't even do these hearings because they're so ridiculous. Everybody's just trying to have a viral moment. Yes and no. It's true that there is political grandstanding around many of these televised hearings. It's also true that there are facts entered into, if you will, public evidence, in other words, the public consciousness, about who these people are and what they've said in the past. So what Kim is talking about in the Snowden case, what Kennedy is being asked about in the case of the vaxxing and anti-vax stand, what Patel is being asked about in the recriminatory, vengeful actions that he has proposed. He said this stuff on Bannon's podcast, that we need to go after these people who prosecuted the last president, from the last administration who prosecuted this president. I mean, all these things do have to be entered into the record and the public consciousness of the record, just to be reminded of this rogues gallery of people who are part of this administration. And in the case of Hegseth, you have to be reminded, he's a drunk who is going after women in a sexually harassing way, to be polite, is involved in sexual assault, and he can't manage a men's bathroom. And you're letting him manage the Department of Defense? All of these things have to be added in. So in that way, I'm glad they televise these hearings, and I'm glad these public hearings happen.
Hamas has started releasing more hostages to Israel. The Palestinian militant group handed over one female Israeli soldier to the Red Cross. Happened in a ceremony in northern Gaza today. She's one of 3 Israeli hostages planned for release today as part of a ceasefire deal. 5 Thai nationals were also released in exchange. Israel is freeing more than 100 Palestinians held in Israeli prisons. President Trump's approval rating at the beginning of his second term, one of the lowest in decades, beating out only his first term. A new Gallup poll shows 47% for Trump so far, just above the 45% who said the same thing at the beginning of his first term. That rating places him below all other presidents elected since 1953. He is the only one with an approval rating below 50%.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
That's right. The new president with a lower approval rating than any other president, moving up 3 notches to 47%.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, he'll look back at that 47% in about 9 months as like the good old days.
Yeah, it's
going to drop much lower. Yeah.
Governor Gavin Newsom trying to help out businesses affected by the deadly Southern California wildfires. He signed an executive order yesterday, that will help businesses by extending license and permit renewal deadlines for those businesses. Fees will also be waived for those who have to get replacement license certificates if the originals burned up in the wildfire. Police are looking for suspects in the shooting death of the brother of rapper Too Short. Happened in Oakland. The Mercury News reports the rapper's brother, Wayne Shaw, was gunned down yesterday during a botched robbery. Police say a group of people were trying to bust into a marijuana grow house and allegedly shot the 61-year-old Mr. Shaw when he came out of the building to confront the would-be thieves. So far, no arrests there. Border Patrol agents are asking for the public's help reporting cases of ocean smuggling off the coast of San Diego. Border Patrol agent Justin Castrejón says there's been a shift to the coast now. After 700 ocean smuggling incidents off the coast of San Diego in the previous fiscal year, there have already been 200 since October 1st. Agents are asking people to report any incidents they see, since they pose an even greater risk to the migrants trying to cross the border on small, poorly operated boats. In Oakland, police are trying to locate dozens of plaques stolen from the 7th Street Oakland Walk of Fame. About 40 of them were taken from the display recently. That theft cost about $150,000 worth of damage. Authorities believe the thieves pulled them out of the ground to be sold for scrap metal. That's nice. A man is behind bars on suspicion of stealing Humvees and equipment from a military warehouse. Happened in Tustin in Southern California. Police say 40-year-old Alfredo Reyes Jr. broke into the Army Reserve Center on January 8th. Investigators believe he cut a lock to get into the military vehicle parking lot. He's accused of stealing 3 Humvees, 18 bayonets, 8 machine gun vehicle mounts, 7 freestanding machine gun tripods,
and a partridge in a pear tree,
40 pairs of binoculars and medical equipment. I mean, was he starting his own army?
Wow.
All the stolen items were recovered after police arrested him. We don't know what he wanted with all those items. OpenAI is investigating whether Chinese AI startup DeepSeek took data from ChatGPT to build its large free language model. DeepSeek says its model works at the same level as OpenAI's latest version. It currently sits at the #1 free app spot on the Apple App Store, overtaking ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be on brand for them to take various aspects of the existing technology and improve upon it.
This code, I'll take a few of those chips. Why not?
Yeah.
The astronauts who have been in space for an unexpectedly months-long assignment are conducting a spacewalk now. Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore traveled outside the International Space Station.
It's a long walk home, though, I'll tell you that. Yeah.
They're collecting samples to determine whether microorganisms exist on the outside of the orbiting laboratory. The spacewalk started this morning, went about 6.5 hours. Hey, if they're up there, might as well put them to work. I mean, you can't just sit around and languish in space because you're there on an extended vacay. No.
Yeah, open the pod bay doors, please, Hal. I remember that was the...
I'm sorry, Dave.
Right.
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Thank you. That's right. Come on, Hal. Open the pod bay doors.
Everything is going extremely well.
All right. That's a 2001 Space Odyssey reference. Kim probably doesn't get it because it was...
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
You do, though, right, Kim?
I married a nerd. I totally get it.
Okay.
Yeah. Starbucks is planning to cut about 30% of its menu options by the end of the year.
Wait a minute.
What?
All right, now you get to a story that's important. What's going on at Starbucks?
Yeah, it's part of the coffee chain's efforts to stop losing customers after 4 quarters straight of dipping sales. New CEO Brian Niccol calling the plan back to Starbucks and said the current menu is a bit overwhelming for customers and for employees. There's just too much on there. They're going to cut 30% of things off.
Wow, getting rid of 30% of the menu, Albert. I mean,
I've never seen anything like
that's
it.
pretty extraordinary. Do you get any food when you go into Starbucks? Either one of you, Albert, do you get into food? Do you know?
I try not to. I just make my coffee from home. Coachella Valley coffee as well, but
yes, Coachella Valley coffee. That's right. Thank you for mentioning it because I do also avoid Starbucks. Because I know I have the greatest coffee.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
I have the greatest coffee on earth waiting for me at my home, which is what I like to do, and I oftentimes bring it in a to-go carrier. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Use our discount code MarkT at checkout for 10% off. Go back to your
fresh
stories,
beans, good taste, the best tea. No,
Fresh Beans was my nickname in high school, by the way.
Fresh Beans?
Yeah, Fresh Bean. Here comes
and
Fresh
they were
Beans.
back then very fresh.
Mm.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
She wrapped up so quickly, Albert. I wasn't really anticipating it, but all right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, thank you very much. Albert, you are my leader. Like it or not, I turn to you as someone who has a view of the whole playing field, the universe that is The Mark Thompson Show. You know that now we are 16 minutes over time. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with that, but I did want to take our last seconds here and address a couple of comments. I don't know. There's a lot here. Let me just see. Mark is right. Keep your eye on the ball. These are circus con artists, Deanna Robertson says. If you look away just for a second, sigh. Exactly. Right. Keep your eye on the ball. We try to do it for you here. Calvin Wong, shadow producer of this show, says person in charge of national secrets can't say Snowden was wrong in stealing secrets. Yeah, and here's the story on Snowden, and I'll just give this to you quickly because we are over time. You can argue that a lot of the information that Snowden released was valuable information to the public. I'll remind everyone that it was associated with warrantless wiretapping and the widespread use of warrantless wiretapping, the kind of dragnet associated with what was, again, government surveillance that wasn't, that existed without warrant. You can also look at some of the stuff that Snowden released and see war crimes and other things that were associated with American military operations. So you may say, hey, Snowden was actually involved in a righteous effort. Fine. That's not what the question was. The question was Snowden right or wrong to jack military secrets, to jack government secrets? That's what you're being asked about as the nominee for Director of National Intelligence. This has nothing to do with evaluating what he took, because I know there are many people who can weigh in on this in our audience and say, hey, Snowden did a great favor. This isn't what the question was. It was a question about whether or not it was okay for Snowden to jack that information and release it. So, also, Trump's obsession with minorities, Hotspot says. Trump's obsession with minorities and pedigree is looking more and more like Germany in the 1940s. Wow. Yeah. Remember the last time Trump was in office, he fired the pandemic response team before COVID, says Olive Tree. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And we've seen him do this in the case of the FAA. He got rid of the FAA head. He's getting rid of all of these heads of these various administrative agencies. And in this case, oops, it comes back and bites him. But, as Jim Slayton says, didn't Trump say something this morning that I hope people pick up on, that DEI under Obama and Joe Biden were bad, but not to worry. He just changed it up a few days ago. What did he change? Yeah, I mean, please. David Katz is still my favorite cat after my two kitties, says Trevor Starr in Hollywood. SCOTUS is a rubber stamp for Trump. It will happen. This is in reference, Calvin Wong is saying to the it there is OMB taking and seizing control of appropriations from Congress. I'm with David Katz. I don't think so. Did you see, Randy says, how much positive RFK Jr. had to say about Medicare Advantage yesterday? It's all part of the message to get people used to being defaulted on to Medicare Advantage when they join Medicare. This is a part of a bigger conversation, but I'd love to just spend 30 seconds on it now. Medicare Advantage is an expensive way in which private companies can get fat at the trough of the taxpayer and those who need Medicare and Medicare coverage. So Randy is right that Medicare Advantage is being foisted upon people so that it looks like a better deal than Medicare. But the reality is it's a way of, in a sense, getting a lot of companies richer. It's it feels like it's government helping you out, but it's not. All my Black Hawk pilots were female warrant officers, says Michael Reich. They flew us in and out of combat. Girl testicles like Brunswick bowling balls. Oh. That's one way to put it, Michael Reich. Yeah, they're super talented people. I mean, I don't know. Well, you know how I feel. This gender prejudice is insane, especially when it comes to flying a helicopter. My God. The bending of the knee, Karen Wallace says, is like what Putin did with his oligarchs. Yeah, the bending of the knee she's talking about here, Karen Wallace is talking about the press conference today where Trump came out and in addition to making some opening remarks about the lost souls on board that aircraft and the helicopter as well, he quickly devolved it into what we know about the DEI stuff, but then he surrendered the microphone, in effect, to others who were there, and they spent time initially going, first, I want to recognize President Trump, who has, changed the trajectory of this nation in such a positive way and made it easy for, and you see how they're forced to genuflect, they're forced to just over and over and over again praise Trump before they can make any other remarks, and whatever remarks they make, they can't run afoul of what he's just said. Marilyn says, what up with a $3 super sticker? Thank you.
Big shout out.
Marilyn G. And Eugenio de Arnal. Muchísimas gracias a ti. Gracias to you. A big gracias. I wonder if Eugenio probably doesn't even speak Spanish, and here I am making it sound like he's got a very romantico kind of name.
He does.
Eugenio de Arnal.
I'll give you that.
Anyway, thanks for the $5 on the super sticker, Eugenio. And appreciate it. I think that is all the time we have, everyone. I'd like to... Well, I could read comments all day, Kim. I really could. I'd like to continue here and share all of my knowledge, my extensive experience with...
Do you know who I am?
Yes,
I'm kind of a big deal.
I'd love to. But alas, I must step aside, everyone. Albert, thank you for showing up to work today.
Albert, thank you.
Yes, and Kim, thank you as well.
Kim, how are you?
Kim does a show, minus all the rancor and politics and crap. She just puts on her sweet side.
What?
After Party Live, it's called.
We'll do it live.
Yeah.
I'll write it and we'll do it live.
So check that out. We will see you tomorrow on our Big Friday show. And until then, Shadow, take me home.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. We're out of time.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.